Okay, in terms of managing a Jade system, which was the fourth of the areas we're going to look at for 2016, source control, we following the source control workshop we had earlier in the year, we've got a clear plan, a clear vision of where we're going with that source control process and how we're going to output definition of the schema that you can then load into a third-party tool and bring back round. But one of the things that came out of that also was that there are a lot of people using deltas, and we hadn't done much work on deltas to make them easy to use. So we've made some ease of use improvements to delta management. Right, so operational changes. Just to reiterate, there's no migration with 2016, and for upgrades where you're not using Install Shield, we've made them much simpler, and the instructions have shrunk, and it's a much easier and less error-prone process. We've enhanced the database utilities around file selection and so forth, and made it easier use. Some of you may have been using the Jade recompile all methods in a batch sense. That's always returned 0, but now if anything hasn't been compiled or there are compile errors, it will actually return an error code, which makes the operational use of that much easier, or sorry, much more useful. With all of the certifiers, both physical, meta and logical certifier, we constantly look at things that we could include there. Sometimes the things that are requested would take an enormous amount of time. So we have to be a little wary about what we put in them, but we constantly find little areas that we improve. Now, one of the things that you might notice as a result of that is that as things like logical and meta certify, we add more checks in, you might find things that we didn't find before. So just bear that in mind. Right, okay, well that's the end of 2016, so let's look forward to the future on how the product might progress from there. So there's a number of areas I want to cover in this. One is the delivery mechanism, how we're going to deliver Jade going forward. And I want to look about how we're going to research the product going forward. And then the 3 areas that we talked about as the main direction, how they're going to progress. That's productivity, the user experience, and the management of Jade systems. They're going to have our 3 main thrusts, and we'll talk about what might be in those. Now, in terms of delivery, we are going to continue with the pattern of associating a release of Jade with a year. So this is 2016, and the next one, whatever year that comes out, will take that name. So we're not actually going to say which year it's going to be at this stage, but it will certainly be in that frame. So not necessarily every year. What we're trying to do is build products and build releases that you want to take. We want to get away from this us constantly nagging you to get up to the latest release. We want you to actually want to get to the latest release. So we're trying to put more things into the product that you want. We will be delivering service packs for the releases, but not on a predefined schedule. We're confident that the improvement in quality will continue, and that service packs will only be delivered when they're required. Okay. Now, to help people going to new releases, the latest version on the website will always include all of the hot fixes applied, so you don't have to, it's not a messy process. Download it, upgrade, you're done. And if you're already on the latest release, we will keep on the website consolidated hot fixes. So all the hot fixes up to the current one are there. You can just load the lot in and you're up to date. Okay. We showed you earlier the F1 button that takes you to all the documentation that's on the website. one of the things that we think we might look at going forward is consolidated list of new features. I mean, one of the things that we did today, we mentioned a couple of features that are in the development environment that weren't widely known, and we do have users, for example, that jump releases. Some people have gone from 6.3 straight up to 7.1 and may not have realised what was in 7.0, and there's chunks of the product they won't know about. So
7.0 release.
Yes, the release notes are there, but often people don't go and read all the release notes, so we might do some edited highlights type thing.
Mails don't read instruction manuals.
Robert, how could you say that? For that, Robert's just suggesting that males don't read instruction manuals, so what's the point of doing it? Outrageous, outrageous. Okay.
What happens with the online help if you're not online?
Well, you can't see it if you're not online. If you can't connect to the web, you're not going to be able to see it.
It's an any file option.
Sorry?
It's an any file option.
For what?
So you can go to the PDF.
The help is there's an any file option that controls whether you're using the web by default or not, and if you turn it off, it will look for the PDF files in the old way.
And I was thinking you were being facetious. Sorry about that. Right, okay. Research. Now, one of the things that we need to do is to find out how our product is being used. And we'd like to have a clearer picture of what of the features you're using, which ones you're using a lot, which ones you're thinking of using less of, and so forth. And so long term, we'd like to find some way of automating this to find out what you're using. But in the short term, what we'd like to do, we'd like to ask your cooperation in doing a survey early next year around what of our product you're using, which bits you're using, and so we'll use that in terms of focus. So this is a feature that's heavily used, therefore we need to invest money in it. This is a feature that is a candidate for deprecation because it is something that's not widely used, and it'll help with both our planning and our resource control. Hi, Carolyn.
Will we be presenting results at our user group in February?
We will present it. That was lovely. That was a prompt disguised as a question. Okay, so and the results of that we'll be able to present at the next user conference, which is in February, which I knew, of course. Right. Okay. So, in terms of productivity, what we're looking at for future releases. Let's start with the IDE. We mentioned earlier about user experience and how that's applied to lots of apps. Well, we're going to try and apply it to the IDE and look at a number of areas where we're going to look at things like flow, how users are using it. We've provided a number of things today which we think in 2016 make the developer experience better. And we're going to continue that by getting in some specialised resource in the UX area. We saw today that we're doing type methods as a language extension for Jade, and we get a lot of new features about why doesn't Jade language do this and why doesn't it do that, and we take a lot of time. We're quite cautious over these types of changes because part of the attraction of Jade has always been the simplicity and the elegance of its language, so we don't want to overload it. So we take a lot of time researching what we may put in the product. And of course, in terms of diagnostics, we've started with the lock area, and I think already we can see from here today that there's a few suggestions of how that might be extended and what else we might be able to do in that area. So any new feature suggestions in that area would be gratefully received. Right, now we talked earlier about making the user experience, the visual experience better, and one of the things that we have used in the past is skins, and you've seen how that has been applied to the IDE, but it hasn't been an easy process to do in the past, and we're trying to provide some facilities that make skins easier to apply. And we've made a very small start with allowing you to see the skins applied to a form in the painter, but we'll continue down that process. We'll continue to look at performance, both of the overall product, but also of the thin client product. And we're going to take a bit of a review of the architecture of the Jade thin client. As I was saying at the beginning of the presentation, we've had a lot of people who don't want to move away to say .NET for the presentation layer, would like to stay with the Jade thin client, but would like it to be better. So look at that. And reporting is another area where we think it's probably right time now just to have another look at what's available in terms of reporting and what, for example, we offer in terms of the report writer. So managing a Jade system. We're going to complete the loop for taking a specification, a schema out of Jade into possibly a third-party source control tool and then back into Jade. So we'll complete that path. We're also going to review our utilities, and we talked earlier about the cloud and what that might mean to us in terms of change. I think what it means is that our utilities have to be easier to use and faster, and there are two areas that we're going to look at with those utilities. And the same with the operational type things, reorgs, deployments, all of those areas, we'll try and get them so there's more automation and less chance for things to go wrong. And that's it. That's me. That's the end of the presentation. So